Imagine standing in a church so quiet you can hear your own heartbeat. The candles are lit. The flowers are perfect. Every single person in that room is holding their breath. And then she walks in. Not a duke, not a lord, not the man everyone expected. And in that one moment, the entire world of Bridgerton changes forever. This is not just another season. This is not just another romance. What is about to happen in season 5 has never been done in the show before. A wedding that the 10 never saw coming. A love story that broke every single rule of Regency era London. And a bride who had to choose between the life she was supposed to live and the life her heart was screaming for. Stay right here, because by the end of this video, you are going to understand exactly why this wedding is the most important moment in Bridgerton history. Asterisk, let us talk about Francesca Bridgerton. Because for years, she was the sister everyone forgot. While Daphne had her Duke, while Anthony had his Kate, while Benedict chased his muse, and while Colin finally found the courage to love his best friend, Francesca sat quietly at the piano. She played her music. She smiled at the right moments. She wore the right dresses. She said the right things at the right dinner tables. And yet, nobody really saw her. Not truly. She was always the background character in a family full of main characters, the one Bridgerton sibling who never seemed to need the spotlight, because she had built an entire world inside herself that nobody else was invited into. Then she married John Sterling. And for a little while, it felt like she had finally found her person, someone who understood her silences, someone who did not need her to be louder or funnier or more like the rest of them. John saw Francesca in a way that felt rare and real. Their love was soft and steady, not the kind that burns the room down, but the kind that keeps the fire going through the coldest nights. And then John was gone, just like that. Taken from her before she even had the chance to fully understand what they had built together. So when season 5 begins, Francesca is 2 years into her grief. 2 years of black dresses and quiet mornings and pretending she is fine because that is what the world expects from a widow. The Ton does not give women much time to mourn. Society has a schedule, and grief is not on it. So Francesca makes a decision, a practical one. She will re-enter the marriage mart. Not because her heart is ready, not because she has stopped thinking about John, but because life goes on whether you are ready or not, and a woman in Regency London needs a husband the way she needs air to breathe. And that is exactly where Michaela Sterling walks in and ruins everything. In the best possible way. Michaela is John's cousin. She comes back to London to take care of the Comartin estate. And she has no plan to fall in love. She is not looking for a romance. She is not trying to cause a scandal. She is simply doing what needs to be done. But from the moment she and Francesca are in the same room, something shifts. It is not loud. It does not announce itself. It is the kind of feeling that creeps up on you slowly, the way dawn comes before you even notice the sky changing color. Francesca starts to feel things she does not have words for. And the more time she spends with Michaela, the harder it becomes to pretend those feelings are not there. Asterisk, there is a specific kind of silence that falls over a room when someone does something the world was not prepared for. It is not the comfortable silence of a Sunday morning. It is not the peaceful silence of a sleeping house. It is the sharp, dangerous silence of 100 people holding 100 opinions behind their teeth, waiting for the right moment to let them all out at once. That is the silence that follows Francesca Sterling everywhere she goes in season 5. Because London can feel it before it is even confirmed. The Ton always knows. And what they think they know about Francesca and Michaela is enough to set the entire social season on fire. Regency era London is a world built on appearances. Everything runs on reputation. A woman's entire future, her safety, her children, her place in society, all of it rests on what other people think of her. There are no second chances in the Ton. There is no quiet forgiveness tucked away in a back room somewhere. If you fall from grace in this world, you fall hard, and you fall publicly, and everyone watches with their teacups raised and their eyebrows even higher. So when whispers begin to circle about a widowed Bridgerton woman and her dead husband's female cousin spending just a little too much time together, the reaction is not gentle. It is not kind. It is the ton doing exactly what the ton has always done best. Talking. And nobody talks quite like Lady Whistledown. Picture this. It is a Tuesday morning. The post arrives at every fine townhouse in London at roughly the same hour. Butlers carry silver trays, footmen move through hallways, and on every single tray, sitting right on top of everything else, is a fresh copy of Lady Whistledown's society papers. And on this particular Tuesday, the headline practically jumps off the page. Whistledown does not name names outright. She never does. That is not how she works. She is far too clever for something so obvious. Instead, she writes in that sharp, sweet, dangerous way of hers, asking her dear readers whether they have noticed a certain widow of noble standing whose period of mourning seems to have led her not toward a suitable husband, but toward something far more interesting. She wraps the gossip in silk and ties it with a ribbon. But underneath all that elegance, the message is absolutely clear. Something is happening between Francesca Sterling and Michaela Sterling, and London is watching. Now add 3 new faces into this already burning room. First, there is Christopher Anderson. He is the son of Lord Marcus Anderson, and he arrives in London as a mysterious bachelor with good looks, good money, and absolutely no shortage of interest in Francesca. He represents everything society wants for her. He is the easy road, the acceptable answer, the solution the ton would sigh with relief over. And that is exactly what makes him so complicated, because Francesca is not blind. She can see what he is. She can see what choosing him would mean. And part of her, the part that is exhausted from fighting, wonders if the easy road might just be worth it. Then there is Helen Sterling, Michaela's mother. A woman who is charming on the surface in the way that expensive things sometimes are. Smooth and beautiful and impossible to read. Helen did not raise her daughter to cause trouble. She raised her daughter to survive in a world that does not make space for women like Michaela. So when she arrives in London and sees the way her daughter looks at Francesca, the way Francesca looks back, Helen does not panic. She does not scream. She simply smiles that careful smile of hers and begins to think very quietly about what needs to be done to protect everyone in the room, including the 2 women who have absolutely no idea how much danger a smile can carry. And then there is Lady Elizabeth Ashworth. She is the one nobody is watching closely enough. A high society figure who moves through ballrooms like she was born inside one, always in the right place, always saying the right things, always appearing to be exactly what everyone expects her to be. But Lady Elizabeth knows something, though details of which she knows are still buried. But her presence in season 5 feels like a clock ticking in a quiet room. You do not know when it is going to go off. You just know that it will. And when it does, the fallout is going to touch every single person connected to Francesca and Michaela's story. This is the world Francesca is trying to survive while also trying to understand her own heart. She is not just falling in love, she is falling in love in a place and a time where that particular love could cost her everything. Her name, her family's reputation, her children's futures, her place in the only world she has ever known. And yet, every time she tries to talk herself out of it, Michaela walks into the room. And the argument Francesca was building inside her head simply falls apart. The ton was not ready for this love story. But then again, neither was Francesca. Asterisk, nobody prepares you for the moment your own family looks at you and does not know what to say. Not because they do not love you, not because they have stopped caring, but because the thing you are asking them to understand is so far outside the world they were raised in that their love and their fear are at the exact same time, and they cannot figure out which one to listen to first. That is the Bridgerton family in season 5. Not villains, not heroes. Just people who love Francesca deeply and are absolutely terrified of what loving her openly is going to cost every single one of TH. Violet Bridgerton has buried a husband. She has raised 8 children largely on her own in a society that does not make that easy. She has watched her children fall in love one by one, and every single time. No matter how complicated or scandalous or unexpected the match was, she found her way to standing behind them. She stood behind Anthony when he chose Kate over duty. She stood behind Colin when he chose Penelope over pride. She stood behind Benedict when he chose Sophie despite every social barrier between them. So the question Season 5 puts on the table is a simple one on the surface and an almost impossible one underneath it. Will Violet stand behind Francesca now, when the cost of standing is higher than it has ever been before? Violet does not make this decision quickly. That is what makes her arc so painful to watch. She is not a cold woman. She is not a cruel one. But she is a woman who understands the ton in a way her younger children do not yet fully grasp. She knows what happens to families who step too far outside the line. She has seen it. She has watched other families disappear from invitation lists. Watched their daughters sit through entire seasons without a single dancing partner. Watched their sons get quietly passed over for positions and partnerships that suddenly went to someone else. Violet knows that love is not always enough to protect the people you love. And that knowledge sits on her chest like a stone while she tries to figure out what kind of mother she is going to be in this particular moment. Then there is Eloise, and if Violet is the stone, Eloise is the spark. Eloise Bridgerton has spent her entire life arguing that society is wrong. She has fought against every rule that told her what a woman should want, should say, should be. She has turned down suitors, refused to debut properly, driven her mother to the edge of exhaustion with her opinions and her books, and her absolute refusal to simply go along with things. So when Francesca comes to her, quietly, carefully, with this enormous thing she has been carrying alone, Eloise does not hesitate for even a single second. She does not flinch. She does not look away. She simply takes her sister's hands and says what Francesca needs to hear before Francesca even finishes the sentence. You are not wrong for this. You are not broken. And I will burn this entire season to the ground before I let anyone make you feel like you are. Eloise becomes Francesca's shield in a house that is still deciding whether to be a safe place. And the tension that creates between Eloise and the rest of the family is some of the richest, most emotionally loaded drama the show has ever produced, because Eloise is not just defending her sister. She is forcing every single Bridgerton in that house to look at themselves and ask what they actually believe when belief has a price attached to it. Anthony Bridgerton does not have the luxury of simply feeling his feelings. He is the Viscount. He is the head of the family. Every decision he makes sends a message to the ton about where the Bridgertons stand, and the ton is watching very closely right now. Anthony loves Francesca. That is never in question. But Anthony also carries the weight of every sibling, every feature match, every family alliance on his shoulders. And he has carried it for so long that sometimes he forgets there is a difference between protecting his family and controlling them. Kate sees it before he does. She always does. And the quiet, firm conversations that happen between Anthony and Kate in Season 5 about what family loyalty actually means are some of the most important scenes the show has quietly slipped in between. The ball gowns and the drama. Colin and Penelope are living inside their own complicated reality in Season 5. Penelope is Lady Whistledown. The ton knows it now. And the way people look at her has shifted in ways that are still settling. She understands better than almost anyone in that family what it feels like to have a secret that the world would use against you if it ever got out. She understands the fear of being truly seen by people who were not ready to see you. So when the story of Francesca and Michaela starts to unfold, Penelope does not look at it the way society looks at it. She looks at it the way a woman looks at something she recognizes deep in her bones. And the column she chooses not to write about Francesca might be the most powerful thing Lady Whistledown ever does. Benedict is quieter in his support than Eloise, but no less certain of it. He has always been the Bridgerton who lived slightly outside the expected path, the artist in a family of viscounts and soldiers, the dreamer in a house of pragmatists. He does not give speeches. He does not argue at dinner tables, but he shows up. He sits next to Francesca at the events where people stare. He laughs a little too loudly at her jokes in rooms where nobody else is laughing. He makes sure she never has to stand alone, even when the rest of the family is still finding their footing. And Sophie stands beside him in all of it, warm and steady, a woman who knows exactly what it feels like to be looked at like you do not belong somewhere you have every right to be. The Bridgerton family has never been perfect. They have always been loud and messy and beautifully, painfully human. But season 5 asks them to be something harder than perfect. It asks them to be brave. And the ones who rise to that, the ones who choose Francesca over comfort, over reputation, over the easy path, those are the ones who will make you cry in a way you were not expecting when you sat down to watch a show about ball gowns and romance, because this was never just a love story between two women. It was always also a story about a family learning that love without conditions is the only kind worth having. Asterisk, there is something about a wedding morning that feels different from every other morning. The light comes in through the curtains the same way it always does. The birds outside make the same sounds they made yesterday. The world moves at exactly the same speed it moved the day before. But inside the chest of the person getting married, everything is different. Everything is louder. Everything is sharper. Every single feeling they have ever had about the person they are about to walk toward comes rushing up to the surface at once. And there is nowhere to put it, nowhere to hide it, nowhere to run from it. That is the morning Francesca Sterling wakes up to on the day of her wedding. And it is nothing like the first time. When Francesca married John, she was nervous in the way that most young women are nervous on their wedding day. Hopeful, a little uncertain, grateful for something steady in a world that never stopped moving. But this morning is different. This morning she sits at the edge of her bed in the pale gold light of early dawn, and she does not move. For a very long time, she is not afraid of Michaela. She has never been afraid of Michaela. What she is afraid of is the size of this moment, the weight of it. The way it is going to crack the world open and rearrange everything on the other side. She knows that the woman who walks out of this room and down that aisle is not the same woman who walked into this room last night. And she is sitting very still, very quietly, saying goodbye to the version of herself that existed before she chose this. She picks up a single object from her dressing table, a small brooch, one that belonged to John. She holds it in her palm. For a long moment, not crying, not speaking, just holding it the way you hold something when you are trying to say everything that words cannot carry. And then she sets it down gently, stands up, smooths the front of her dress with both hands, and breathes one long, slow breath that pulls all of her scattered pieces back into a single shape. She is ready, not because the fear is gone, but because the love is bigger than the fear. And that, she has decided, is enough. Across London, in a different room entirely, Michaela is having her own quiet morning. She is not the kind of woman who cries easily. She has moved through the world with a kind of confidence that most people in her life have mistaken for coldness, because they could not tell the difference between a woman who does not feel things deeply and a woman who has simply learned to hold her feelings in a place of careless hands cannot reach them. But this morning, standing in front of a tall mirror in a dress that is nothing like anything she has ever worn before, Michaela is not cold. She is not distant. She is completely, entirely, overwhelmingly present in a way that is almost too much to bear. Because today is the day she stops pretending. Today is the day she stops shrinking herself down to fit into spaces that were never built for her. And that kind of freedom, when it finally arrives after years of waiting, does not feel light. It feels enormous. It feels like standing at the edge of the ocean and realizing the water goes further than your eyes can see. Helen Sterling helps her daughter with the final details of her dress. And the two women do not talk much. They do not need to. Helen smooths a fold of fabric near Michaela's shoulder and keeps her hands there for just a moment longer than necessary, and Michaela reaches up and covers her mother's hand with her own. And in that silence between them is every conversation they never had, every fear Helen swallowed quietly in the night, every prayer she sent up for a daughter she always knew was going to demand more from the world than the world was comfortable giving. Helen steps back, looks at her daughter, and smiles the kind of smile that has nothing careful about it at all. The church fills slowly, and the filling of it is its own kind of drama. There are people in those pews who came because they support Francesca and Michaela completely, who sat in their carriages that morning with their chins up and their hearts open and made a decision that their presence in that building was a statement they were proud to make. And there are people who came because they could not stay away, because the pull of witnessing something this historic, this scandalous, this completely outside the boundaries of everything they were raised to believe was simply too strong to resist. Ton has always had a complicated relationship with the things it claims to disapprove of. It condemns them loudly in public and watches them closely in private. And today, every single person in those pews, whatever their reason for being there, is about to witness something they will be talking about for the rest of their lives. The Bridgertons arrive together. That is the detail that matters most, not what they are wearing, not the carriage they came in, not the expressions on their faces as they walk through the doors. The detail that matters is that they are all there, every single one of them. Anthony, with his jaw set and Kate's hand in his, having made a decision somewhere between last night and this morning that the Bridgerton name stands for something more than social survival. Eloise walking in like she dares anyone in that building to say a single word. Colin and Penelope side by side, Penelope thinking quietly about the column she is going to write tonight, the one that is going to be the most honest thing Lady Whistledown has ever put on paper. Benedict and Sophie in the row behind them. Sophie, leaning slightly toward her husband in that easy way of someone who has found the person they are completely comfortable existing next to. And Violet who walked to the carriage this morning without a single word to anyone, who sat in silence the entire ride over, who stepped out onto the cobblestones in front of the church and stood still for just a moment, looking up at the building before she straightened her back, lifted her chin, and walked in to sit in the front row for her daughter. That is the moment the whole season has been building toward. Not the vows, not the kiss. Violet Bridgerton sitting in the front row. The music begins. It is soft at first, barely there. Single instrument finding its way through the silence of the room the way light finds its way through a crack in the curtains. And then it grows, slowly, steadily, the kind of music that does not rush itself because it knows exactly where it is going. Heads turn. The entire room shifts in its seats. And Francesca appears at the end of the aisle. She does not look at the crowd. She does not scan the faces of the people who came to support her or the faces of the ones who came for entirely different reasons. She looks straight ahead. She looks at Michaela. And Michaela looks back at her with an expression that has no performance in it, no social armor, no carefully constructed composure. Just her, completely and entirely herself, standing at the end of an aisle in a church in Regency, London, waiting for the woman she loves. Francesca begins to walk. And then it happens. A figure near the back of the church moves quietly, carefully, in the way that people move when they are trying very hard not to be noticed. A small envelope is passed along a row of hands, moving from person to person with the efficiency of something that was planned well in advance, until it reaches the end of the pew closest to the aisle. And just as Francesca passes that pew, just as she is 3 steps away from the moment that will define the rest of her life, a gloved hand reaches out and presses the envelope into her palm. She stops. The music keeps playing. Nobody else seems to notice, or perhaps they notice and they are too afraid to react. Francesca looks down at the envelope in her hand. It is sealed with black wax. There is no name on the outside, no indication of who sent it or where it came from or what it contains. Just the weight of it sitting in her hand and the sudden, absolute certainty that whatever is written inside this envelope has the power to change the next 3 steps she takes. She does not open it at the altar. She stands there for the space of 2 full breaths, feeling the weight of the letter, feeling Michaela's eyes on her from the front of the church, feeling her mother watching from the front row, feeling Eloise somewhere behind her radiating the kind of fierce, protective energy that could probably stop a runaway horse. And then Francesca does something that nobody in that church expected. She folds the envelope in half without opening it. She tucks it into the folds of her dress. She raises her eyes. She finds Michaela's face, and she walks forward 3 steps. The most important 3 steps in the history of the Bridgerton family. She reaches Michaela. Michaela takes both of her hands, and the expression on Michaela's face shifts, just slightly, just enough, into something that asks a question without any words. Francesca answers it with the smallest shake of her head. Not now. It does not matter right now. What matters is this. What matters is you. What matters is that I chose to keep walking. The ceremony proceeds. The words are spoken. The promises are made, not the performative, theatrical promises of a society marriage designed to merge 2 fortunes or 2 family names. These are the quiet, terrifying, real kind of promises, the kind that ask something genuine from the person making them, the kind that cost something. And Francesca and Michaela make them to each other in front of every person in that church, in front of the tongue that whispered about them, in front of the family that had to decide whether love was worth more than reputation, in front of the ghost of John Sterling who, if you believe in such things, might just be the one who arranged for the music to be that particular piece in that particular key. On that particular morning, the letter sits folded in the fabric of Francesca's dress and opened, waiting, its contents unknown to every single person watching, unknown to Michaela, unknown to the viewer who has been leaning forward in their seat for the last 4 minutes trying to see through the screen. The black wax seal unbroken, the secret still sealed inside it. And that secret, whatever it contains, whoever sent it, whatever it means for Francesca and Michaela's future, that is not a question season 5 is going to answer quickly. Because the best secrets never come cheap, and the best shows always make you wait for the thing you want most. The ton came to this wedding expecting a scandal. What they got instead was something they were completely unprepared for. They got a love story that did not ask for their approval, that did not soften itself to make the room more comfortable, that did not shrink or apologize or explain itself to anyone sitting in those pews. They got 2 women standing in front of the world and choosing each other anyway, loudly and quietly at the same time, in the way that only the most real and certain kind of love can manage to be both things at once. Bridgerton has given us dukes and viscounts and masquerade balls and secret authors and slow burn romance that made us want to throw something at our screens and then immediately rewind to watch the moment again. But this wedding, this morning, this letter, this walk down an aisle in a church in Regency, London by a woman who spent years being the one nobody saw. This is the one that is going to stay with you long after the credits roll, long after the season ends, long after the ton has moved on to its next scandal and Lady Whistledown has found her next headline. Because some love stories do not just entertain you. Some love stories quietly rearrange something inside you. And when you look up from the screen, the world looks just slightly different than it did before you pressed play. That is what Bridgerton Season 5 is. And that wedding, that letter, that 3-step walk toward everything is only the beginning.